is that the solution is people just leaving their houses, which is not what I'm saying. So I want to play the full clip so people can understand what I said, and then I'm happy to explain what I meant. If you want the president to create more affordability in the United States, you need the prices of things to go down. The way the prices of things go down is with more supply, right? This is very simple. Okay, this is why I find it fascinating that there is so much talk these days about H-1B visas. Okay, now, there are many problems with the H-1B visa program. You can make the claim, I think somewhat accurate, that the H-1B visa program is too broad. The H-1B visa program, about 65,000 are offered every year, enormous number of renewals of people who have been in under H-1B visas before. I asked our sponsors over at Comet to explain this. It's a project of perplexity. H-1B visas are a U.S. immigration program that allows employers to hire foreign workers in specialty occupations that require at least a bachelor's degree or equivalent expertise. Around 85,000 new H-1B visas are issued annually. The total number, including renewals, exceeds 400,000 per year. That means somebody got an H-1B last year, and now they got it renewed for this year as well. So you're bringing in foreign workers, mainly in tech. Something like 50% of all H-1B visas are coming in the tech industry. They're people who are coming over to work in computer engineering or computer science or something. They're working for Intel, or they're working for Microsoft, or they're working for Google. This has become a point of contention on the right, not because of the usual reasons that the right is concerned about immigration, but for economic reasons. So there are lots of reasons to be concerned about legal immigration in the United States, not just illegal immigration, legal immigration. So, for example, if you are bringing in people who are low-skilled, don't have jobs, are going to be dependent on welfare and be more of a net draw on the Treasury than they are a benefit economically, that would be a reason not to let somebody into the country. Cultural differentiation, a massive reason not to let in certain people from certain countries. They might be qualified in computer science, but if they're coming here and they don't like American values, and they like terrorist groups, for example, we shouldn't let them in. Right? It's like basic common sense. And you can make the case that there are a lot of people who are being let in who are actively Chinese agents, infiltrators at our tech companies who are stealing IP. That would be an amazing reason not to let somebody in. However, the case that's being made right now against H-1B visas is that H-1B visas are bad economically speaking in general for the American population. Now, in order to make that case, you have to make the case that they are artificially driving down the price of labor, which we can argue about in a second, and that there are no externalities that are beneficial to bringing them in, that the country is better off banning them and using quote-unquote domestically supplied labor than bringing in people on H-1B visas. Now, if we're talking about pricing of labor, there's no question, obviously, that you bring in more people who are applicants for a job and the price of the labor goes down. That is a deflationary policy. Just in terms of affordability, it makes products more affordable. If labor is cheaper, products are more affordable. For the people who don't get those jobs, life is worse. For the broad American public, life is better because the affordability went up. Again, all economic policies have beneficiaries and have people who are harmed by those economic policies. The question is, how widespread are the beneficiaries and how discrete are the people who are being hurt and vice versa? Okay, let's be adults about how we discuss economics when we're going to talk about these big issues. Okay, so here is the case for importing certain types of labor. One, there are in fact certain positions in the United States that require a level of expertise that may not be reachable in the numbers that are currently being churned out by American universities. That is a shortcoming of our educational system, and it is a problem. And so you can say we should up our game. I agree. We should absolutely up our game educationally. But in the meantime, if you do not bring in the labor supply, particularly to tech, tech will go find the labor supply. And so what you will end up with is an office that was employing 30 Americans and 3 H-1B visa people. If the costs grow too high, simply moving to another country where they hire 30 Indians and 0 Americans. Right? This is the problem with the reason companies offshore is not because it's easy or fun to simply move your company somewhere else. It's because the labor cost becomes so prohibitive in the United States that companies move away. And you can try to tariff them back, but all that does is artificially raise the price on Americans. Again, we're talking about affordability. There are trade-offs in economics. Autarky comes with the fun feeling that everybody in America is making American product. It comes with the very large downside that your products are economically inefficient, they don't work as well, and you're not globally competitive. Right? All policies have trade-offs. It is also better for the American people, broadly speaking, to bring in the best from other countries. Now, how do you determine the best? You can make, again, the case that the H-1B visa program is fatally flawed. It's not bringing in enough of the best. I will point out that many of our best founders in the United States are either immigrants or the children of immigrants who came in on H-1B visas or who came in just generally without an H-1B visa through other forms of legal immigration as students. And the reality is that maybe our screening procedures should be different, but we need to see specifics on what the screening procedures you're applying are that would allow for there to be, for example, an Elon Musk American citizen creating tens of thousands of jobs. Or the head of Google, Sundar Pichai, creating tens of thousands of jobs. Or the head of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, creating tens of thousands of jobs. Now you can say that maybe if those people didn't exist, there would be an American who just did that job. But that is now living in the realm of theory. Okay, it's not living in the realm of reality. Brain draining other countries is also a good thing for America in terms of our own global competitiveness. I'd rather bring all the smartest people from around the globe if they are going to, again, this is assuming the precondition that they are going to assimilate to American values, that they like America, that they are American patriots. If they're not, they shouldn't come in, period, no matter what industry they're in. But if they're going to be good American patriots, creating tens of thousands of jobs is a good thing while depriving those jobs from China, from other countries. Brain draining is good. We brain drained Germany in the 1930s, and that was quite good for the American economy. We have brain drained a number of other countries around the globe, which is why America is the global economic powerhouse. So again, when we are talking about affordability, we have to talk about things like supply. And conflating all of these issues and pretending they don't exist doesn't solve the affordability crisis. It just means that we have an affordability crisis and we rip each other to shreds over sort of ancillary issues. Because I think, again, everyone on the right agrees that people who shouldn't be in America shouldn't be in America. The question is, should we bring the best and brightest here if they are going to be great Americans? And my answer is absolutely. Should we be having more people come here to found companies who are going to be good Americans? Sure. Is the H-1B visa program totally geared toward that? No. Maybe there need to be changes there. But again, pretending that we can just go autarkic, that is a mistake. The reason this comes up is because yesterday, the president of the United States was on with Laura Ingraham, and he was asked about H-1B visas, and he's being ripped up by a certain portion of the right for his answer here, which frankly, I think is mostly reasonable.
There's never going to be a country like what we have right now.
And does that
mean
the
Republicans have to talk about it, Laura.
And does that mean the H-1B visa thing will not be a big priority for your administration? Because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent.
When we have plenty of talented people here.
No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles, or I'm going to put you.
How did we ever do it before?
Well,
I'll
give you an example. In Georgia, they raided because they wanted illegal immigrants out. They had people from South Korea that made batteries all their lives. You know, making batteries are very complicated. It's not an easy thing. It's very dangerous. A lot of explosions, a lot of problems. They had like 500 or 600 people, early stages, to make batteries and to teach people how to do it. Well, they wanted them to get out of the country. You're going to need that, Laura. I mean, I know you and I disagree on this. You can't just say a country's coming in, going to invest $10 billion to build a plant, and going to take people off an unemployment line who haven't worked in 5 years, and they're going to start making missiles. It doesn't work that way.
Okay, the president happens to be right about this. When he says there isn't the talent, again, people are reading that, I think, wrongly. He's saying there's not enough talent in particular industries at this time. You need a transitional skill set force to come in and sometimes teach Americans to do something. I'm not sure what's totally unreasonable about that. I think, frankly, there's a lot of demagoguery of these issues going on because people don't want to acknowledge the realities of how economics actually works. It's more fun to rail against the idea that there are any shortcomings at all anywhere in the American labor force, or that it's actually good to brain drain other countries, or that we should have the best and brightest from other places come here and engage in our economy. And again, I love Laura Ingraham. I think she's wonderful. When Laura says, if you go back to the 1950s and 60s, how did we do it then? The answer is there were a lot of foreign-born people who actually were founding some of these companies and were involved in the production of some of our most sophisticated technologies. I mean, she's talking about missile technologies, for example. I mean, it was an ex-Nazi, Werner von Braun, who was heading up our rocket program in the United States. And that's not a defense of Werner von Braun's Nazi associations. That is a recognition that importation of talent actually matters when you are crafting a dynamic economy. Of course. But it seems that when it comes to affordability, people are more interested, again, in demagoguing the issues than actually talking about solutions to the issues. And if you do that, what you'll end up with is a lot of people who are angry about affordability, but get no actual answers that provide affordability. When Laura says she's interested in raising American wages, everyone's interested in raising American wages. But the problem is this: if you raise the American wages and you raise the American prices faster than the wages, then the wages get eaten up by the price increases. This is what happened during the Biden administration. You need two things: increased wages and lowering prices. And the way that you do that is with innovation and with increased supply. That is how that works. You need both of those things. I can artificially raise the wages in the city of Detroit in 1950 by unionizing the entire workforce and negotiating extraordinarily lucrative contracts. And by 1965, the American auto industry will be getting its lunch eaten by the Japanese. You can do this. Again, there are ways to artificially increase the price of labor. What you end up doing is increasing the price of the product that the labor produces, and that ends up making that product non-competitive, and then eventually the industry dies. Short-term thinking here is the enemy of actual economic health, robust economic health in the long term, which requires innovation and malleability of labor supply, and movability of labor is a big thing here. And again, none of this is to argue that we should have free, unfettered immigration or the United States is just in economic form. I started this conversation by acknowledging full scale the H-1B visa program may be letting in too many people. It may be letting in the wrong people. But the argument that is being made against the H-1B visa is an argument that proves too much, as we used to say in law school. It is too broad an argument, and it basically says we should simply shut our borders. And again, if what we are worried about is, quote unquote, the price of labor in the United States, and we are saying that we need higher wages, then we probably should go all the way and just ban tech. I mean, these arguments, these are not good arguments. The argument that economic health comes, for example, from artificially increasing the price of labor by restricting supply, that applies just as much to tech developments themselves, to robotics, for example, as it does to importation of labor. If you want to maintain manufacturing jobs in Ohio, and that's like the only thing you care about is increasing the actual wage paid for a manufacturing job in Ohio, you probably should ban all robotics. Because if you take a look at where all those manufacturing jobs went in the United States, manufacturing productivity did not go down in the United States. It has increased since NAFTA in the United States. The number of jobs went down, not because they were shipped to Mexico, but because robots are doing a lot of those jobs. Now, you can ban the robots. You can. It'll just make you globally and domestically non-competitive and make everybody broad spectrum poor because, again, it's not just about the amount of money in your pocket. It's about what you can buy with that money. If the price of all the goods goes up and your wage goes up, but the price is going up faster and you have worse products, you don't have a better life. And that's the thing that everybody is seeking when it comes to affordability. We'll get to more on this in a moment. First, in business, they say you can have better, cheaper, or faster, but you only get to pick two. What if you could have all three at the same time? That's exactly what Cohere, Thomson Reuters, and Specialized Bikes have done since they upgraded to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. OCI is the blazing fast platform for your infrastructure database application development and AI needs, where you can run any workload in a high availability, consistently high performance environment and spend less than you would with other clouds. How's it faster? OCI's block storage gives you more operations per second. Cheaper? OCI costs up to 50% less for compute, 70% less for storage, 80% less for networking. Better? In test after test, OCI customers report lower latency and higher bandwidth versus other clouds. This is the cloud built for AI and all your biggest workloads. Right now, with zero commitment, try OCI for free. Head on over to oracle.com/Shapiro. That's oracle.com/Shapiro. Well, speaking of affordability, I did an interview last week that aired early this week with Trigonometry. That's Konstantin Kisin and Francis Foster talking about the affordability debate in New York. And one of the things that apparently went viral is somebody clearly taking something I said out of context and then pretending that what I'm saying is that the solution, economically speaking, to affordability is people just leaving their houses, which is not what I'm saying. So I want to play the full clip so people can understand what I said, and then I'm happy to explain what I meant about general affordability and about the decisions that we make in our individual lives. And so the fact that everyone's flattering Mamdani by saying, well, he did talk a lot about affordability. And what I keep saying to people is, well, affordability is not like Beetlejuice, where if you just say it over and over, it suddenly arrives. You actually have to pursue policies that are likely to alleviate an affordability problem. But if your solution is always give me more power, and it does seem like that is the solution of the day from both sides, actually, then you're likely to just continue penduluming one side to the other. Because people don't want to learn the actual lesson, which is if you actually want affordability, then either you have to change policies or change locations. Those are really the only two things. And also, I think more broadly, it's not about affordability. We have trained an entire generation of people to believe that if their lives are not what they want them to be, it's the fault of systems, as opposed to decisions that are in their own control. And politicians absolutely have a stake in selling that. A lot of people in our industry have a stake in selling that. It makes people feel good about themselves and bad about the world. And the reality is, if you want a better life, you should feel better about the world and worse about yourself until you actually, go do the right things.
I broadly, generally speaking, as a matter of principle, agree with you. But I mean, I was looking around at property prices, real estate prices in New York. I'm doing pretty well for myself. I feel kind of poor looking at those things.
Oh, no, it's unaffordable. And I'm not saying it's not affordable.
Right.
It absolutely is unaffordable. And if you wanted to make a political difference, what you would do is you would relieve the building regulations. You would make it easier for people to build, not harder. You wouldn't rent control, because if you stop rent controlling, then that creates incentive for people to build. You would allow people to build up further. You would get rid of many of the code regulations that are kind of antiquated. Like there are things you actually could do. And then if you're a young person and you can't afford to live here, then maybe you should not live here. I mean, that is a real thing. Yeah, I know that we've now grown up in a society that says that you deserve to live where you grew up, but the reality is that the history of America is almost literally the opposite of that. The history of America is you go to a place where there is opportunity. And if the opportunities are limited here and they're not changing, then you really should try to think about other places where you have better opportunities. Again, that's not saying that public policy can't change. I think it can, but I think that the solutions being offered are untenable. Okay, so I agree with me, as a famous man once said. So, as you will note there, I'm offering two specific things for people to do. One is change the public policy where you're at. If you're in New York, change the public policy so that the public policy is better, alleviate some of the problems that you have with affordability by doing all the things that I'm talking about right there. And then I say that as an individual human being, if you are upset with the public policy and you feel like it's not going to change anytime in the near future, and that your life is being ruined by that public policy, you're left with two choices. One is to sit there and be miserable and fulminate against a system that is not changing. Again, if you can change the system, great, do it. Vote out Mamdani. Vote out the bad city council. Vote in somebody who understands basic economics and isn't a third worldist socialist. Do all those things. Great. Stay and fight. I did this in California for years. And then there came a point where I realized California was never going to provide me the public policy backdrop for a successful life, the kind of life that I wanted to live. And so I moved. And again, that comes with costs. I'm not pretending that moving doesn't have costs. And when I moved, I made sure that, I'm lucky. My parents were able to move with me. Our in-laws were able to move. A couple of sisters were able to move. We were able to take our entire family, which at that point was actually geographically disparate, and move into the same area. No one has talked more publicly about the importance of having a supportive family structure near you than I have. It is also true that if you're a young person, a 20, 21-year-old, 22-year-old, and you're not finding successful conditions in the city, and those conditions are not likely to change. If you want to seek happiness, you can either get angry at the system that's not going to change, which will not make your life better, or you can do the things that are in your control, like maybe looking outside of New York City. This seems fairly inarguable to me. That is not an argument for, quote unquote, abandoning the city or abandoning your principles or anything like that. Every individual has to make their own decision about what level of bad policy they are willing to undergo in order to maintain their status in the city. But simply shouting at the moon doesn't solve problems. It doesn't. David Harsanyi has an excellent piece over at the Washington Examiner talking about this. And he quotes one of the very online people saying, quote, "If we want Democrats to have a supermajority, this is the message for the GOP to adopt. Tell people they need to move. Don't form family bonds. Worship the banks and big corporations. My goodness." Okay, first of all, that's absurd. There is no one in America who's talked more about forming family bonds than I have. And let me explain something about forming family bonds. The reason that people in New York City are not forming family bonds is not because the price of rent is too high. That is not the reason. If you get married, there are two of you in New York City, likely both of you have jobs now sharing one space. So it is cheaper for you to get married and live with your working spouse in that same apartment complex than it would have been for you to do it by yourself. Okay, the reason we have a marriage crisis in America is not because of economics. This is a lie. There are places all over the world that are poorer than the United States that have much higher marriage rates. In fact, one of the bizarre things about the way that the developed countries work is the more developed the country, the fewer people tend to get married and the fewer children they have. So this notion that broad speaking Americans are not having kids because they're too poor is silly. You know what? Americans were having tons of kids in the 1930s, like lots and lots and lots of kids. And then they had lots of kids again in the 40s and lots of kids again in the 50s. And then they stopped having kids when birth control became available because we were a rich country. And this is true for every developed country. This attempt to link a sort of Marxist redistributionist economics, heavy regulation and government subsidization, that's what's going to make the kids happen. I have zero evidence supports this. Zero. Literally none. Okay, but as Harsanyi says, if there's a better way to worship a bank than borrowing $800,000 on a 30-year mortgage at 6.5% for a 900 square foot home in Park Slope, I've yet to hear of it. Though no one, as far as I can tell, is arguing that the GOP should adopt moving as a central message. That's correct. I'm not saying that that's the central message. I'm saying that you, in your personal life, when you're talking about what makes your life better, be accurate about what are the things that you can do to make your life better. As Harsanyi points out, it should be noted it's a myth that all, or perhaps even most people grousing about housing costs in expensive metros are native to those cities. Most of these people would not surrender familial and communal bonds if they relocated to less expensive cities. So again, the idea that like you're living in New York because that's where your family is, for the most part, that's not true of a lot of these people. 70% of the population in Washington is not native to D.C. A huge percentage of New York is not native to D.C. The average home price in New York is $735,000. It's not much better in the outlying suburbs or even exurbs. None of that is considering the sky-high cost of living in the area, says Harsanyi. Years ago, a couple starting out could comfortably live in many towns on Long Island. Not today. You're paying $750,000 for a new house, not to mention outlandish property taxes in any neighborhood with a decent school district. For that kind of money, a young couple could get a veritable mansion with a pool, parks, low taxes, more opportunity, and a thriving school district in a Dallas or Indianapolis suburb. There is nothing wrong with pointing that out. That is correct, obviously. And it is also true, as I said in that tape, that the history of America is a history of people moving. As Harsanyi points out, in 1950, Detroit was a booming industrial city with 1.8 million residents, and Phoenix had 106,000 residents. Today, 640,000 people live in Detroit, and 1.6 million people live in Phoenix. Moving is not a new thing. We are moving significantly less than our parents. We are less mobile. And that is because politicians are lying to people. They are lying to you. When they say, the politicians, stay in place, we will solve the affordability crisis, and then they provide for policies that do nothing of the sort, it just makes you frustrated. And then you go to the other party who says the same thing. And then they don't do it. And it makes you frustrated. And this is why you get more and more radical politics in these unaffordable cities. But none of these politicians are going to solve that problem. Number one, the solutions they are applying are not actual solutions. And number two, they are lying to you because they don't even have solutions to these things. There's an article in the Washington Post today talking about affordable cities. And there's one in particular they point out, Pittsburgh. As real estate prices and interest rates shot up in recent years, the prospect of home ownership moved further for many Americans, especially young adults in large metro areas, where the median home price can run well over $500,000. But not in Pittsburgh. After dropping $10,000 to rehab a bathroom and decrepit kitchen cabinets, Isaac Ray and Liam Weaver bought their first home for $163,000. Though the housing market has tempered since the frenetic days of 2020, prices remain relentlessly high. The U.S. median topped $410,000 in the second quarter. That's more than 50% climb in 5 years, which of course is due to government inflationary policy. For people on the coasts, it's even higher. In L.A., it's $995,000. How about Greater Pittsburgh? $229,000. With a low unemployment rate, with new industries. Private redevelopment is happening at rapid rates. Deregulation, ability to build, fixer-uppers. Again, when I made the case that personal mobility is something that people should consider, again, that's not for everybody. But this kind of bizarre notion that has set in on the right, that personal mobility is not part of the American story, that is not true. And I'm not talking about abandoning families. I'm not talking, again, we are already an atomized society. You think New York is a place that's filled with families who just don't want to move? New York? Truly? That's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about singles who are living in rent-controlled apartments with a couple of roommates. New York is like the center of American familial life. The reason I'm pointing this out is because if you want to have realistic expectations of how politics works and what it can achieve, your life will be better. And if you want to have realistic expectations about how you can make your own life better, which is what we all want, our own lives to be better. We want the lives of our families to be better. Then recognizing baseline realities is the key component to happiness. Ignoring reality in favor of political utopianism is a recipe for personal unhappiness. Well, that's all for now, folks. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts down below. Be sure to check out all of the other great content on my channel. I'll see you here next time.